about that. You don't have to have 100% of people. I mean, if we were to start with nobody in the country who had ever had the disease, and you wanted to immunize so many people to make, I mean, you don't have to do 100%.
No.
Which, you would think, well, of course everybody's got to be immunized, but that's not the case at all.
No, actually, it's pretty interesting. And I was listening to another pod, Mayo Clinic, did a little pod on it, when the breakout happened or whatever. And they were saying that they explained it like this. So you're at a bowling alley, right? And someone on lane 1 has the disease. That will easily get passed to lane 2. It's like one guy here will get passed to one lady over here. We'll get passed to 3 people on lane 3, which will get passed eventually to like 200 people in the bowling alley. But if you have this certain number, and each disease has a different number, so say it's 65%. If you have 65%, dude on lane 1 will have the disease. Lady on lane 2 will be immune. No one else in the building gets it. So kind of think about it like that. I mean, obviously that's not a perfect analogy.
At some point, the chain is going to be broken by the.
But the likelihood of the chain breaking is higher. I think that's what.
Right.
I think that's.
Yeah,
what
I'm sure it's all statistics.
Right.
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't eradicate everything, but it makes
I think herd immunity is
even 50%. So if there's a 50% chance that the person you're going to encounter will not be able to carry it, or however you want to describe that. I mean, that's significant.
Yeah. Now, herd immunity is theoretically enough to get rid of the virus. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously,
to almost eradicate it.
Oh, yeah.
To knock it down to where it's not obviously an epidemic. Even.
Right.
But man,
is that number hard to find, Shauna? I had a hard time.
I can't find like an actual number.
I know. I had a hard time.
Found
with
it for measles came up and
I bet Joe Rogan knows.
I bet he doesn't, because I'm sure.
I bet he knows somebody that knows.
Oh, I'm sure he does.
Yeah, it doesn't give like an actual percentage or number.
And I think it's kind of a moving target right now.
I'm sure they don't really know. I just they update their guesses sometimes, but
90%. That's a crazy.
At the beginning, they suspected 70%. I don't know where it's at now.
I think I saw that.
I don't know where it's at now, but
which is a high number from what I understand too.
Yeah. What if we had like 13%? Is that global number? I don't know. Not like 13% of people have been infected.
13% in our country that
was it the U.S. So
which is probably
that's a lot of people.
Which is probably not accurate. That's probably low because think of how many people, especially early
didn't
on, were asymptomatic.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. I'm sure it's more than that. And the vaccine comes out, we start pumping those out. That's gonna, assuming it works, that'll get those numbers up.
The one problem
fast.
they're having now that so many, the vaccines are 90%. Mm-hmm. A lot of these studies are having a hard time getting volunteers because they're like, well, I'm just going to wait for the real thing. Why do I want to be in a trial? And so they're worried that they may not get enough test subjects for some of the ones that are.
I'm sure they will. I mean, a lot of people are on edge, and
yeah, they're on edge. But again, part of the studies you don't know whether you're getting or not.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not sure. I mean, if I knew I was getting the vaccine, I'd be more than willing to give it a try. If I thought it might be a placebo,
well, you'll know eventually.
Well, you will know eventually, but you don't want to find out the wrong way.
But you might not be able to get the vaccine for 2 years if it's, you don't know how fast they're going to get this stuff out and double shots for everyone.
Right, but I would hate to be wearing what I thought was a bulletproof vest and find out that it was just sheer nylon. It
would suck for a month. I don't know how long it takes for them. How long does it take for them to tell you?
I haven't a clue.
I'm sure there's people that would sign up.
I thought you were saying
because
I thought you were part of the
deal with efficacy is knowing how it works on your control group as compared to your other group. So if those people are never exposed to it, the control group is never exposed to the virus, what good are they? They've taught you nothing.
So do they actually expose them, or do they just see what happens?
I think I don't know exactly how that works.
I don't think it's ethical to expose them unless they
not expose
sign
them.
Up for
not
it.
If they expose them, but I mean, these people obviously can't live in a bubble.
My question is, and this has nothing to do with the podcast, don't we need an antibody test before we start vaccinating a bunch of people?
Why?
Not if there's no negatives.
What's the point of vaccinating someone that's already immune?
Choice.
Well, because at this point in time, obviously they don't know whether or not you can get it a second time.
No, but I mean like common sense. Like we only have this tiny amount.
Wait, you're cutting all this out, right?
So far.
No, we only have this tiny amount of inoculation
So
available
far.
for like the next 6 months.
So
say.
far.
Right. Shouldn't we test people and make sure we're not like half of those are going to people that, because I mean, we're going to give them to healthcare workers first who have probably been exposed to COVID several times just because of their job. Like, how do we know half those people aren't already? That's my only thing. It's like, why
Because we don't know whether or not they can get it a second time. And they are, being as they're exposing themselves to it over and over again, I mean, I would just assume those people
right.
knew that they were safe.
I don't know how much a vaccine's going to help if you can get it a second time anyway. But yeah, maybe a little.
All right. Well, unless you guys have anything more.
Well, I did find one spot that says it's 60 to 70%
Okay.
for the herd immunity.
Yeah, but I agree though, Jeff. I mean, that's water at this point.
Yeah.
It's going to be, that number's going to be fluid for a while, I imagine.
Yeah.
I want to talk about a couple of, like I said, I kind of went down more the myth hole.
I knew you would.
Well, because the podcast I listened to, that's what they all talked about, or about the myths involved, and and I don't want to go too far into it, but it's from what the researchers say, vaccines are safe. You know, because there's quite a few of them. There's vaccinations and I think they're mostly talking about children. Because that's who's getting vaccinated for the most part, are children. You know, a lot of people are
Right, they
concerned-
get you when you're young and your immune system is robust, you know.
Well, yeah, but people are thinking that people have concerns about multiple different things. One, can a kid handle all this crap that you're putting into them at the same time? Which we've already talked about that.
Right.
Apparently, theoretically they can handle 10,000.
What did you say, 10,000?
10,000
Yeah.
simultaneous vaccines. The body can work with it. Again,
Not with live attenuated, but probably the other ones.
with vaccines. I don't know. I'm not the researcher. I'm just saying. That's
Right,
what they're
right.
saying. Theoretically, they can handle
Yeah.
it.
I think Don would say, depending
They
on
won't give
the
you two
type.
live viruses at the same time.
Again, we're talking about theoretical. No one's giving anybody 10,000 vaccines.
No. We don't
It's-
even have that many.
Regardless,
Yeah.
that's just it's theoretical. Secondly, there's the myth about epilepsy and vaccines. For some particular vaccine causes epilepsy or can trigger epilepsy. And again, studies show that there have been multiple tests, and you know,
No substantial evidence
well,
shows
I was
that.
trying to think of the word for the tests. It was like the trials, I guess you can say, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been no difference in. Okay, so these people have epilepsy, and there's no difference in.
Right.
Or
It's
it's negligible.
It's like you get epilepsy like 10 years later, and then you read on some forum online that one guy got this shot and then had epilepsy right away, and now you think, oh, I had that vaccine. It's like, yeah, probably everyone had that vaccine.
Yeah, but so people who have epilepsy, to people who don't, and the people who have vaccines, and the people who don't, there doesn't seem to be any correlation between people who get vaccines of a certain type
Yeah.
get it any more than a person who didn't. And then the last one, of course, is
Not that it's not possible, though. I mean, vaccines do cause side effects, actually, more often than not.
I think it can cause seizures, but we're talking about epilepsy.
But usually the side effects are fairly mild. Yeah. No, I know.
Yeah,
but
not-
I'm saying
not
it's
necessarily seizures.
possible, theoretically. But so they haven't found any like
but the
evidence.
research
towards
is
it.
saying that
Right.
that's not
Right.
the case.
Right.
And then, of course, the biggest one nowadays is vaccines and
Autism. Yeah.
But again, the same, and this all came from a doctor by the name of Andrew Wakefield, I think in the 90s. He had published something which, according to the source that I found, had procedural errors, financial conflicts of interest, and ethical violations that are discrediting his information that he reported. Since then, the journal has retracted his article.
Okay.
He's lost his medical license, and the many studies. That's what I was looking for.
That's a toughie. How'd you pull that one?
I don't know, but many studies, much like the epilepsy, there's no correlation
Gotcha.
between people who have and have not, and people who have it and don't have it.
Right.
And I would, because I've done more research than anybody on that one,
Yeah.
for sure. And I'm familiar with Dr. Wakefield. And by the way, losing your medical license, just because you're doing procedural things and financial, that in and of itself could have disqualified a lot of it. Just, the biggest.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not.
I'm saying there's multiple levels on what's going on.
I don't know how you're, when you say there's studies of people who aren't, because most kids are getting the MMR these days. I mean, that's pretty much required.
Standard. Yeah.
The problem was, and where I think Wakefield probably exaggerated some of his findings, the anecdotal evidence in the early 90s was there was an explosion of autism. Because I can talk about when I went to school, I don't know any kid that was ever identified as autistic. And when you guys were in school, even years later, how many kids were autistic as compared to today, where the percentage is up to 1 in 92 or even less? That's and nobody can say, well, that's what's doing it. So to say that's not what's doing it, it's hard to say something's not doing it when you can't tell me what is causing it.
Yeah, there's so many theories.
Something has happened or is happening that is causing more and more kids to come up with this. Yes, and I'm saying that study was definitely flawed. He was definitely flawed, and it's almost like he was trying to back up his theories based on anecdotal evidence with flawed research and statistics.
Because if they can't find out what it is that's causing it, the most they can do at a certain point, they can say, okay, so we've researched and took studies and everything else, and so here's 100 kids who got vaccines, and here's 100 who didn't, and there's still 1 in 98 or whatever it is.
Yeah,
they're saying, okay, so if we take several thousand,
and I don't think that's the case.
What
you just laid out, I don't think that's the case.
Okay, that's the study that I found. I mean, it is what it is.
Right, and there's a lot of studies. Just like I don't think that there's too many people. You said theoretically, I don't think there's a lot of people saying, kids could get 10,000 vaccines, but that's a theory. I don't think that's theoretically.
I mean, that's like the standardized experimental procedure, double-blind placebo.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's plenty of studies like that.
And there's also research that shows that autism starts in utero, as compared to after they're born.
I mean, I've heard a lot of theories. Scientists do not really know. Unfortunately,
they
they obviously don't. That's why
I've heard things like processed foods or something in the food, or
it could be a number of things,
toxins sprayed on food. I've heard so many theories.
That's kind of my point. Is that while we don't know what caused it or whatever, so far as research can tell right now in this date, vaccines,
it's not vaccines.
It's not vaccines. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm not the researcher. I don't know. I can only go off of what I researched.
As far as that goes, the anecdotal evidence was so many children developed symptoms or first noticing the symptoms like in the 2 to 3 year old age, which is around the same time the vaccine. Just like anything that you do, cause and effect.
Yeah.
You start looking at things like that. So you can eliminate the fact that they had the chickenpox vaccine because they hadn't had it yet, or you can eliminate this because they hadn't. So I mean, I get why it's. And again, until they can tell you why, I mean, there's so many theories right now. So would I leave them off the hook completely? No, not necessarily. And it depends. It's just like with the flu vaccine, or some people get sick from the flu vaccine.
Sure.
And that's not one that's, I mean, that one's relatively safe.
Mm-hmm.
There's some people that die from the smallpox vaccine.
Yeah.
What percentage of people are going to be affected by something? And if 98 out of 100 aren't affected, does that mean that it's not causing a problem in the 2 out of 100?
Mm-hmm. Right.
There is so much we don't know about the body and how all this stuff works. I mean, the whole science of this is amazing.
Which is kind of what we're saying about the epilepsy, too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just, all we have are the studies right now. That's the best we can do.
Yeah.
Until people who are much smarter than we are try to figure it out.
It's not even smarter than we are. It's with the right training and with the time needed to literally spend a lifetime, which is what someone's going to need to do.
I would like to think that the people who are working on that
of
are
people.
smarter than me. I would like to think so.
Chances are good.
Right? People, they're probably doctors.
They're
or
not
scientists.
meditating during science.
There's probably a couple near dropouts working on it. They just skated through.
Okay, so in Don's world, he's related. He's focusing on the people who are failing out of med school.
No, but just barely passed.
No, I'm saying there's probably people like you that almost failed out and
And became ambulance
you would
drivers.
pass. You would pass